Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. I'm Anton, and in this one, we're going to be taking a look at a bunch of Metroid fan games. Now, I'm no Metroid expert, so I've enlisted the help of a friend to dive into a bunch of these games.
Hey, I'm YoExploshi, and today I'm going to help Anton talk about fan games.
Anyways, before we begin, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to see future videos heading your way, and let's get started. Let's start this list off with Metroid Zero. This game is an enhanced recreation of the original NES Metroid. It just looks so accurate that I probably would have believed you if you told me that this was a ROM hack of the original game. However, there are a few minor additions such as a map, fading transitions between areas, and much more that just add to the whole presentation of the game. For some reason though, the color palette just doesn't look quite right. It looks more like an old PC game color palette instead of an NES one, and it just doesn't look all that good. The music is also really compressed and just doesn't sound very nice either. It's overall a well-made game, but there are just some things here and there that just make it feel a little bit rough, such as the fact that the game is just way too difficult, and to put it simply, I think it's because of the increased amount of enemies on screen. Since this game doesn't have any of the limitations bound by the NES hardware, it can just render more entities on the screen. It can get very chaotic, and since they're trying to put the exact placements of enemies, things just don't translate as well because of that. But this game is still very impressive, as it was created using Game Maker Studio, and a very old version at that, so for simply that alone, it's actually very impressive.
Following Zero, we got Metroid Planets. This game is like Metroid Zero in a way. Both include reimagined versions of the original Metroid. However, Planet goes far beyond that. It's trying to emulate the feel of NES Metroid while adding a lot of improvements. It's got sharper movement, a map, enhanced visuals, enhanced sounds, and so much more. But that's not all. Planet has multiple modes, each of which feel like the entire own game. Starting with Planet Zero. Planet Zero is pretty much just the original NES droid without any changes. Next we got Planet Novus, which is its own original game with its own map, additional areas, and bosses. And at last we got Planet Enigma, which is basically infinite Metroid, since it allows you to randomize the map, making each playthrough unique. There's even a built-in level maker that allows you to design and share your own maps. You can post them on the Metroid Planets Discord server, so we're gonna leave a link to that in the description. However, what I personally think is the coolest addition is a multiplayer mode that me and Anton are playing on the screen right now. It's pretty fun, and while we can't really interact with each other, it's still fun to explore the game together with a friend. So if you're feeling like playing a more modern version of NES Metroid, an entire new game, try out the randomized worlds and level creator, or maybe even play any of these with a friend, then definitely check out this fan game.
Next up, we have Metroid Comical. This game is very comedic. Our hero Metroid, who has a bit of a farting problem, must go on an adventure to destroy the Thing to save planet D3MO. To do this, Samus must battle unique enemies, such as the spinning disc of doom, and with her janky physics that make her a wonder to control. Other than that, there's really not much to this game. Maybe the comical part is more referring to the physics or the fact that just Samus spins around like a crazy Beyblade, or just simply the farce. But it's a game, and I think that sums it up in the best way possible.
After the tragedy that is Metroid Comical, we arrive at a better game. Metroid Origins. Metroid Origins is set in an alternate reality where Metroid 2 hasn't happened yet. A research ship was instructed to take data from the planet SR388. Within 2 days all communication is lost, and there was awareness sent to see what has happened to them. The game features 3 areas to explore, and 2 bosses with variations. Anton didn't enjoy it as much as I did, however I think we can both agree that it's a very solid title. There's plenty to explore and it's very open. And there's plenty of speedrun potential if you're into that. But if you're more of a slow explorer, you can probably expect to spend 45 minutes on it. So overall it's a great game and definitely one you should check out.
Next, we have Metroid Between Worlds. This game is a very solid Metroid fan game. It takes place once again on SR388, just like many of the Metroid fan games for some reason. However, it doesn't do anything out of this world, no pun intended, but it does have a good progression structure, which is pretty much all that is needed to create a good Metroid game. I had a lot of fun playing this game, but the beginning was by far the worst part of it. Everything just looked identical, the visuals were boring, presentation wasn't the best, and I just didn't feel like playing. However, once I unlocked the ability to grab ledges, and trust me, that was actually a very important power-up, because once I got past that initial area, the game became way more enjoyable. Something about it just clicked, and the movement felt very good. And honestly, the game is very similar in style to Metroid Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advance. The graphics are pretty basic though when it comes to special effects, but overall it just gets the job done. This project really isn't that impressive or anything, but it's still a really fun game. But the enemies are pretty simple when it comes to movement and AI. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it would have improved the atmosphere and polish of the project significantly. Just like Metroid 2 though, there are a lot of Metroid to destroy. Now they aren't exactly the most engaging battles out there, especially with poor movement and the AI, but they are still very satisfying to destroy. Overall though, I did enjoy my time with this game, and if you can get past that initial area, you will probably think the same as well.
Have you ever thought, what if Metroid?
But small.
Well, if you did, you're gonna love Minitroid. Minitroid is literally a mini Metroidvania. It's got 3 areas to explore and a boss. The areas all look very distinct and they have a fair bit to explore. The game's pretty linear, but it's still really fun to play through. Now the controls are a little weird, but easy to get used to. And the only big thing I didn't like was the final boss. I thought it was pretty frustrating. But you can get used to the patterns fairly easily if you pay enough attention. The game took me about half an hour to complete, so if you're looking for a smaller experience, I definitely picked this game due to its very unique and charming aesthetic.
Next up, we've got Metroid Confrontation. This complete project, which was initially used to test the engine used by the game, evolved into its very own game. The story of this game is about Samus' adventure in a virtual reality simulator, who she is testing for the Federation. I wouldn't say the story is of particular interest, but it just adds to the overall experience, and honestly, it is something a bit different, which is always appreciated. The gameplay in this game is extremely similar to Super Metroid, as you have to explore the world, defeat enemies, jump, roll, and face 3 bosses to finish the game. It's not a super long one, but it still manages to create a short and sweet experience. Graphics are also quite heavily inspired by Metroid Zero Mission, with Samus being, I think, very close to the sprite, if not almost the same. Honestly, this is a great Metroid fan game, but the developer of this game still had more up his sleeve. Now, if you're big into Metroid, or have been around in the Nintendo community for quite a while, especially the days of the Wii U, you may have heard of a project called AM2R. This project, which was created by Milton Guasti, the creator of Metroid Confrontation, is a remake of the Game Boy game Metroid 2, Return of Samus. The game first started off as a faithful remake, but evolved to be much more of a reimagining as it added way more content, enemies, collectibles, and completely redesigned areas, but with keeping the general layout of the map. The graphics are heavily inspired by Super Metroid, and the physics and movement are inspired by the GBA titles, which is just a great blend of 2 fantastic Metroid styles. It's just a fun game to control, and I really enjoyed my time playing it. I actually did play the original Game Boy game a bit, so it was kinda cool to see the way that this game changed things from that title. The music is fantastically recreated. The game was fully completed and released, but it still had room to grow and become even better. And after the 1.1 update, which added and fixed a few things, the game was hit with a cease and desist from Nintendo. It is believed this project was shut down due to the development of Metroid Samus Returns, which is exactly what AM2R set out to be. Nintendo probably didn't want this to interfere with their nearly completed game, which is why they sent out a cease and desist in the first place. But that hasn't stopped the project, as the fans have taken it into their own hands to add more content and fix issues within the game. So it's really cool that the project is still alive and well, even after the Nintendo Ninjas attacked.
While not quite as large as AM2R, this next game probably had a lot of love put into it as well. We're talking about Metroid Nexus. Metroid Nexus is a demo and has sadly never been finished. Upon loading into the game, it just throws you in with no story or anything, so we're free to explore the map. However, one thing I noticed immediately is that the game seems to be very linear. While there are a few shortcuts, I wouldn't recommend searching for them on your first playthrough, since there seem to be a couple of soft looks sprinkled throughout the game. Other than that, the enemy placement is mediocre. There's far too many of them, just makes it very tedious to traverse the area. Also, the game is very awkward to control. I really don't enjoy the layout it uses. There isn't any way to change it or play with a controller, however, I can't really blame the game considering it was released 9 years ago. Now I did say a lot of negative stuff, but take it with a grain of salt. It isn't that bad. It's playable and it's alright. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but if you're bored and searching for more Metroid fan games to play, then check it out. That's about all I have to say. Back to you, Anton.
Now this is where things take an interesting turn. Pirate Metroid, also known as Metroid Ronnie, as that's what the file's called, is a Metroid game that is definitely not the greatest when it comes to quality and, well, collisions. This game doesn't really play all that close to Metroid. Can't shoot upwards, there are no Metroid in sight, and you can just shoot infinitely and it's kind of weird. I don't really like that. But you do get missile tanks in like 2 of the rooms. There's only a few rooms with minimal aesthetics containing different enemies and objects. The final room though contains the boss, which I really couldn't figure out how to defeat. The game also doesn't give you that much in terms of instructions, so it wasn't the best experience. I cannot be that harsh on the game though, as a team of people created it in Game Maker Studio in like 2008, so yeah, it's quite an old game, and who knows, maybe the people involved have gone on to create bigger and better things.
We arrived at the last game on this list. What could it possibly be? Oh yeah, right, Prime 2D. Prime 2D is amazing and my favorite fan game in this list. The graphics look absolutely gorgeous, the setup and intro are great, and I love how they integrated the scanning feature into the game. It really makes me wish that Red had something similar to it. Obviously it's also optional for people who don't really care about the lost aspect, so don't worry about that. Another thing to note is that most fan games on the list didn't have the best keyboard controls, but Prime 2D nails it. And I know I already mentioned it, but the environments look so good in 2D. There really isn't that much to explore, but it's still really fun. This is one of the shortest games on this list, only took me 20 minutes to beat, but it was all worth it just for the boss fight at the end. You see, I'm someone who really values good boss fights in games, so when I got there on my first playthrough, I was pleasantly surprised. It's probably even better than most bosses in the actual Metroid games. I would love to talk in more detail about all these fan games, but I'm trying to keep it short. If you're short on time too and just want a quick experience, this is the choice.
Anyways, that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you guys did enjoy it, and if you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button to see future videos heading your way. This was a really fun video to make, and a big thanks to YoExploshi for helping me out with it. It was a big project, and it's great to have someone else help me out with it, especially since I'm not the most cultured in Metroid stuff, but I have been playing Dread as well, and I really enjoy it. Make sure to check out his channel down below, and with that, I will see you all in the next one. Bye Metroid Dread. Just do it.